Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. And in this video, I want to go over a couple more aspects. We'll look at the sextile and the square. And then in the final video, I'll do the trine and opposition, where you did the inconjunct. All right, so I'm just going to jump right into it, as usual. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. All right, sextile. So we're talking about here, and I have a sextile, pretty strong one between Venus and Mars. And just in general, Venus and Mars in harmony is going to create a very strong sexuality. Looks, sexual vibe, not necessarily looks, possibly looks, but sexual vibe. Definitely. The sextile has the nature of Gemini Aquarius. Listen, guys, people refer to like the old school astrology and stuff like that. It just doesn't make sense. Like opposition things Saturnian, they're just not. I don't know how else to say it. I wish, classical astrology was always right, and it's not. But and I don't know. I can't even remember what they say. Like squares have the nature of Mars. Not really. I mean, they have the nature of Cancer and Capricorn because it's in relationship to Aries. So anyway, sextiles are Gemini Aquarius. They're air sign relationships because the way to measure is from Aries, from the ascendant. So it would be third, 11th, right? So from Venus, we got Mars in the third. From Mars, we got Venus in the 11th, right? And then Sun's a part of it. Sun's dignifying my Mars because Mars is in Leo. But otherwise, Venus and Mars don't really have much to do with each other sign wise. Mars does nothing for Gemini, Venus does nothing for Leo. They're fine, they're both neutral. But just in general, it's a very harmonious aspect, the sextile, and it has an air quality. So you could say, like, especially from the third house, it can bring in not just intellectuality, you could say that, and communication, but also like third house can also be like running around. Like you do see sports in the third house, like people like short distance travel. So like anything that's like not too big or epic, where people are like traveling like short, like running around, on a field, that could also be third house. Track and field, running, racing, anything like that could also have it. So Mars being in third from Venus could be very physically active. Um, Venus in the 11th from Mars could show, social quality. You don't have to dig too deep. Take it loose, take it light. Um, but the sextile, as far as like sextiles and trines are similar. Trines we'll get to. Trines obviously have a more fifth, ninth house relationship, so they're more fiery. So sextiles are more airy. Great for intellect, great for that short distance travel and social stuff. Let's look at some more examples. Alrighty. Okay, Emma Watson. She got a couple really nice sextiles here. Moon to Mars, and that's nice. That'll show like really good relationship with men because it's not like conjunction or square or anything like that. Men are going to treat her well. But then you also got to look at the signs. Mars to Sag or Moon to Aquarius, nothing, neutral, neither positive nor negative. So that's a fine sextile. Here, this one's even better. And you can tell why, because, well, first of all, Sun's exalted, but Mars rules Aries. So Mars is sextile the Sun, and it's dignifying this already exalted Aries. So this Sun is super powered. Okay, Sun in the 7th. It's actually on the 8th cusp. So she's a bit dominant, Emma Watson. She might look a little timid, but no, she needs control. She needs power. She's a boss. She's a boss lady. And so Mars is in the 11th from the Sun. So that's adding, so it's 11th, third. Sun's in the third. So it's adding a lot of sociability, intellect, just air in general between Mars and Sun. So that's like, Mars is not the airiest of planets, but physically active. Air would make the Mars more active. This type of person would like to just get out and about with freedom, especially in Aquarius, running around, doing exercises, stuff like that, starting projects, being very light on their feet. Right. I'm just picking. I don't have any agenda here as far as like who to look at. Didn't really do any sort of prepping. It's my style. It's kind of candid. This one's quite good because it's Mars and it's Barbara Walters. Mars and Mercury conjunct. Mercury stationary, but it's sextile Saturn. Saturn is exalted in Libra, and Mars debilitated. So it's super interesting. That's one, this sextile, right? And interesting is one of the things that can really make someone, not just all exalted or all in domicile, but interesting. Interesting when things are like, debilitated or in detriment, but they're receiving a very positive aspect that dignifies. That's interesting, right? That's good, bad kind of thing going on. Right? Mars is not doing so well here. Mercury's fine, but it's stationary, so that's really good. And then the sextile from Saturn, right? And because Mercury's involved, so that's really helping out her intellect a lot. Okay, so Mercury's in the 11th from Saturn, but Saturn's in the 3rd from Mercury and Mars. Saturn to Mercury is quite scientific. Saturn to Mars is quite stern, very like fierce and authoritative, policeman kind of thing. So that's interesting. Tom Waits. Let's see. Sun to Neptune South Node, Chiron. Yeah, that's interesting. When he's young, the 3rd house, music, skills, piano playing. He was very, he played piano, sang. Also got to Pluto to Neptune. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of abstract. Not really much to say about that. Let's keep going. Tracy Ullman. Okay, I mean, this one's pretty cool because, I mean, she's got her sun, moon, and Saturn in Capricorn. And if you know Tracy Ullman, the Simpsons got their start on the Tracy Ullman show. She was an actress. I mean, she's not that funny, really, but she is, she is a boss lady. Definitely. She's got her Saturn in Capricorn. She's very Capricornian. And then she's got this tremendous sextile between Ascendant and Neptune. And Neptune for anything creative, pretenses, fakery, illusion, storytelling, all that. Very powerful, very strong, right? And so 3rd house, the intellect, the expression, the communication, perfect. It's literally 3rd house from the Ascendant and Neptune. So that's quite strong. Neil deGrasse Tyson. So Pluto to Neptune again. I mean, these are not personal planets, so it's quite hard to, but just, air, just it adds a strong air element, sextile. So it's adding something quite high-minded with the Neptune sextile Pluto sextile Neptune. Then Neil deGrasse Tyson, the scientist, also has Sun, Mercury's sextile ascendant, right? So that's really strongly 11th house related, but it's the ascendant, so it's like it would be anyway. Let's keep it moving. Mike Tyson, maybe we'll find something. Mars, Venus. So that's interesting. So I mean, not Mars, Venus, Mercury. So Mercury's dignifying this Venus, which is interesting. And then we can also see which planets are ruling what. Mercury's ruling the ascendant, Venus is ruling the 9th house and the 2nd house. So that's interesting. Gemini, especially with his Mars in Gemini, you ever notice? I mean, this is not about sextile, but just if you look at Mike Tyson, he's all over the place. You can never guess where he is, and that's the Mars and Gemini, right? Gemini is spontaneous. It's unexpected. You never know where they're going to be next, and Mars is the physicality. But the third house, the third aspect, the sextile definitely helps with sports, with that fast-paced movement, the quick intellect and the quick movements of mind, the short distance travel, right? So Venus still playing into that as well as Mercury. I mean, Mercury not as much. It's not so physical, but Mark Twain has no real noticeable sextiles. Neither does Donald Trump. Benicio del Toro now. Tolkien. Okay, he's got one with the ascendant, Uranus, third house. I mean, it's not really here. You can see. I mean, so this I would consider third house because it's close to the third house cusp, even though it's not, you know, after it by quadrant, it's in the same house. So then Uranus is having a third house influence. Then Sun to Jupiter and Mercury to Venus. Oh, sorry, Moon. Oh, I'm bad with names and things and words. I'm bad with words. I'm a Gemini who's bad with words. Nah, I'm just kidding. So Sun to Jupiter. Jupiter, so Sun's in Capricorn. That's not so good for Jupiter, but Jupiter is in good dignity here. So that is an interesting one. Because they don't really want to communicate very well because Jupiter doesn't like Capricorn. But you know, they're still managing to get along and communicate. Jupiter in the third definitely will help with writing. Okay. This guy's a writer. Ever heard of him? J.R.R. Tolkien wrote some books. Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, things like that. Anyway, so here Moon's in the third from Mercury, and they're both 0 degrees. Sign wise, actually they don't like each other. Mercury does not like Pisces, and Moon does not like Mercury, Capricorn. But you know, the sextile makes it interesting, right? And um, yeah, so the Moon is benefited by Jupiter being in domicile here. That's benefiting this whole sign of Pisces. Very creative, highly creative. Let's see, where's Saturn? Okay, so Saturn, oh, Saturn's dignifying this Mercury, even though it's a square. That's super interesting. Saturn's exalted in Libra. We got a square to Mercury at 0 degrees, and then in conjunct the Moon, which is super duper interesting, right? And remember, interesting is what is really matters when we're talking about people who leave their mark on the world, because it's not just like writing fairy tales. J.R.R. Tolkien, you know, if we're talking about J.R.R. Tolkien, it's not just about writing fairy tales. He has to write the positive as well as the negative. He's got to write about Sauron and the hobbits and the not the hobbits are not negative, but you know, the orcs and all the evil and the killing, and he's got to have a feel for that, and he's got to have some you know, tension in his chart. Every great artist, every great thinker has some tension in their chart, right? It's not all just fun and games and easiness. If it's all easiness, they might be brilliant in certain ways, but kind of boring. But sextiles are great for writers, great for intellects, great for people who are skilled with their hands. All right, let's see Nikola Tesla. Yeah, powerful sextile between Pluto and Saturn. And Saturn is one of the main planets for scientific thinking. And Mercury is, but Mercury can go so many ways. Saturn really is what really makes it very scientific. And Pluto is so diving. You know, Pluto is really penetrating thinking. That's really interesting. It's Pluto and Taurus conjunct the ascendant. It's like extremely deep thinking. Let's see. Let's get one more. Jonathan Swift. Okay, Jonathan Swift wrote some books. Jonathan Swift wrote. Okay, let me just find out real quick. Who is Jonathan? Who is Jonathan Swift? Here's some information. Swift. He wrote. Not even telling me. Gulliver's Travels. That's right. He wrote Gulliver's Travels. Okay, so he's an author. I mean, not the most famous, but certainly famous enough for us to recognize him. And he's got Uranus, Sextile, Jupiter. Uranus and Chiron, Sextile, Jupiter. Uranus and Chiron in Aquarius, Sextile, Jupiter. Okay. And the Jupiter is going to benefit, it's Jupiter in Aries, it's going to benefit this, not by sign, but because it's Jupiter, right? Jupiter is great benefit. And it's going to benefit this shocking Uranus and Aquarius in domicile with Chiron. Chiron is the planet of strange things, Chiron, right? Especially when it's not well, especially when it's, like not badly aspected, where it's causing damage, right? It can just be very strange and great for creativity. All right, we have another sextile between South Node and Mars and Moon in Libra. That's interesting. Libra comes up often with writers because again, it's one of the qualities of air sign. It's an air sign, and so it lends itself very well to writing, but a lot of signs do. But the sextile itself is very helpful for writing, communication, intellectual pursuits, anything like that. And then Moon. Yeah, I mean, this is 11th, but it's still 11th from the South Node. South Node is 3rd from Moon, but it's still, still bringing that air element, still bringing in that intellectual pursuits. And 11th house Moon also, I have 11th house Moon. It's very idealistic, so it's not 11th house, but it is 11th from South Node. So anyway, it's bringing in a flavor of that. So I don't know, interesting. Oliver Stone, no major sextiles. Sting. Yeah, we got one here. From Pluto to Moon. From Pluto to Neptune and Moon. That's interesting. Again, skills of the hands, writing, communicating. Yeah, that's a pretty strong one. Sextile. It's harmonious, so it's just like these planets are getting along in an intellectual way. All right, let's look at the square. So the square is a struggle. The square is like this. It's just two of the same sign, same quality, same equally matched signs going up against each other. If it's fixed, then you have like, Leo versus Scorpio, or Leo versus Taurus, or Taurus versus Aquarius, or Aquarius versus Scorpio. Or it could also be mutable. Then you have, Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, and Sag, squaring up against each other. Or if it's cardinal, then you have Libra, Cancer, Aries, Capricorn squaring up against each other. And the square is just, it is what it is. It's a competition. All right, so let's pull up some squares. Okay, Martha Stewart. All right, I just pulled up her chart. I don't really have an agenda here, but this is what it came up. She's got Moon, square, the nodes. Okay, I mean, square the nodes is interesting. I have Mars square the nodes, which is Mars, my ascendant lord. So you have to look at what planet it is, what planet it's ruling. what house it's in. So second house, dealing with resources, finance. We know she went to jail, right? We know she's adventurous with her resources, right? And that's where her moon is. That's where her satisfaction, her emotional satisfaction is. Right? Moon's ruling the ninth house. So it's pulling in her belief system. Very interesting. It's also got the inconjunct here, but that's benefiting this Mercury in the ninth. She's a Scorpio ascendant, so similar to me, with powerful 10th house, Sun in Leo, Chiron, Pluto, Venus in Virgo. That's not so good. Right? But the square to the moon shows emotional. She's not at peace. She's not happy. She's not. She can never really fully rest, and she doesn't know that. She might not know this consciously because it's all she knows. And if she's not paying attention to astrology, she's not looking at this. She's just like, maybe she's just like, I don't feel at ease. I don't feel well. I don't feel rested. I just like, I'm always tense. I'm always looking for more. I'm always never happy, never quite satisfied. And Sagittarius is very adventurous, right? So this is going to cause tension for her, a lot of tension. She's got her North Node in Virgo, but it's conjunct Neptune. North Node conjunct Neptune. She's friends with Snoop Dogg. I mean, that friendship is not innocent. You know what they're doing? That's what they're doing. Neptune. And she's got her Venus in Virgo. So actually Venus in Virgo is really good. You see a lot of designers and like fashion people, especially with women. Though because they can become very critical with their Venus. Because they no, that's no good. It's no good. It's no good. I don't like no, not that color, not that quality, not that. We want it like this. It's got to be like this. It's got to be exactly like this. And so they're extremely picky, but with good taste often. And her Mars, so she's a Scorpio ascendant with her Mars in the sixth in Aries. She's a fighter. Oh, she's fierce. Don't let her fool you. Saturn and Uranus in the second or seventh. Sorry. Jupiter in Gemini in the eighth. She's not very spiritual. And she wants money, other people's money. All right. Martha Stewart. Let's look at Howard Stern. All right. He's got some squares going on too. Not surprised. Square to the moon with the ascendant. The moon's very high. In Taurus. So, it's good in some ways, easily, just happy camper with money and good food and comfort and all that luxury. But the square to the ascendant is still going to cause some tension there with his moon. Same with Saturn and Scorpio. And Saturn and Scorpio is not, it's a difficult placement. But Mars and Scorpio, I mean, that's pretty fierce, pretty intense. And going to bring dignity, but that's not really square. The square to Saturn, squares to the ascendant are going to be angular, so they're still powerful, right? Let's see what else. So, what's interesting is that people often say like squares are bad, but planets conjunct the angles are good. So how do they reconcile that? If a planet's conjunct the angle, it's not always going to be square, because the MD are often like off a little bit, but they are going to be relatively square to the ascendant. So squares are not necessarily bad. They're pretty strong. They're pretty powerful, but they make you work really hard. And if you don't own them, if you're lazy and you have a lot of squares, that hardship is going to be projected out into the world. People with a lot of squares often have very difficult lives until they internalize that hardship and become very hardworking themselves. So squares make people work hard. And they can bring out difficulties within the planet and the sun. So like this Neptune square, the nodes, the sun somewhat. He could have issues with drugs and alcohol, especially at home, right? This one's a little too straightforward. Let's keep going. Oh, Gwen Stefani. Oh, but is sort of similar. Oh, well, she's got an exalted Mars square the sun, also Uranus a little bit. What's really interesting is that the sun's debilitated in Libra, um, and it's not really receiving much dignity here. Venus is not helping at all. Venus is in Virgo. There's not much dignity here. Saturn, where's Saturn? Saturn is in Taurus. It's not added anything to this Libra sign either. So, I mean, Jupiter in general is good, right? And then Mars is not helping because, well, the Sun and Mars do. The Sun likes Mars because Mars rules Aries. The Sun is exalted in Aries. The Mars does get the Sun to get up and go, and that's why it likes it. It likes it, the activity, right? So Mars square the Sun isn't so bad. It will cause somebody to be aggressive. And then she has her Mars exalted in Capricorn with a really nice trine to Saturn, right? From Saturn. And so this Mars is really, really strong. Yeah, I mean, it's doubly dignified. It's, you know, it's exalted, and then it's got the really nice trine from Saturn. Taurus doesn't really add anything to Mars because Mars is it's opposite Scorpio, but Mars is also ruling the MC. So you can see her career is very strong, even though she herself probably not like such a stellar example of a human being. I mean, definitely very Libran and Virgo-ish. But she does have her moon in Cancer, so she's probably very nice person, very caring and whatnot. But you know, definitely has some issues. Anyway, that Mars square the Sun is definitely going to cause aggressive tendency, and but it will help her get up and go. You know, stay physically fit, doing stuff, starting projects, not lazy, that sort of thing. All right, here we got Stallone, Rocky, Adrian. All right, Sun square Chiron. That's interesting. So Chiron, definitely for somebody who plays characters, you'd want to see a prominent Chiron, unusual characters, comic book characters. And he does. He can play. He's actually played superheroes in movies, but he's got a very strong MC. You know, with Moon, Jupiter, and then Chiron and Neptune. Neptune we often see for actors, artists. But the square is actually interesting because Chiron can represent difficult things, and he does have a scar on his face. And he speaks like with a slant. That's why he's like, you know, it's kind of funny because you know, so the sun represents the person's vitality, and he was injured at birth, and that could be the square to Chiron. So squares can indicate lots of things, but including physical things, physical hardships, negativities, difficulties. It's got a square to the ascendant with Neptune. That's interesting. I mean, again, squares are not all bad, not all good, not all bad. But like if we're talking about angular, then we generally consider them good or strong at least, right? And this is perfectly angular to the ascendant. So, and it's Neptune. And Neptune for any sort of arts, creativity, film, fantasy, storytelling, anything like that, perfect. It's in the fourth house, so that has to do with more material, like building, like real estate. But like, so for movies, it would relate to the physicality of his movies. So like the sets that he's able to build, the worlds that he's able to build. Think about it. If you're talking about Steven Spielberg, um, you know, he, he can build. Well, he can write a story, okay, but the thing is, like, the fourth house is about like the concrete building of it. So he's good at that. He's good at set development. Let's put it that way. Build the building aspect of movie making. Uh, in Neptune square the ascendant might create some difficulty around Neptunian issues at home. Again, perhaps drugs and alcohol are an issue for him when he's at home. And then he's got Moon Saturn. And that actually is probably quite difficult, right? Showing great internal dissatisfaction because the square from so it's deep, very deep, intense moon, square Saturn and Leo. Neither of these are happy because it's not only Saturn, Saturn conjunct Pluto and Leo. Saturn and Leo is not great. Saturn and Pluto together are super duper intense. Like, that's ridiculously intense, egotistical, and it's in his second house. So there's like some huge obsession with resources, right? Like, this guy needs money, or he thinks he does. He's obsessed with it. It's also square his very, very intense emotions that are chironic as well, which are means that they're straight. Like, he's got a very strange mind, right? And it's constantly fighting, struggling, because it's not only in Scorpio, which is a sign of struggle itself, but it's square Saturn and Pluto. So he's carrying this out into his movies, no doubt, bringing in a lot of tension, a lot of seriousness, a lot of heavyweight qualities, right? Drama, deep, intense, right? And it translates to the movies very well. But I do not envy Steven Spielberg because he's probably a tortured individual, right? Maybe he doesn't even know it because that's all he knows. But like, there's some serious intensity going on here that is getting translated into the movies, right? He does have Mars and Capricorn. So definitely a lot of structure there. Moon's his ascendant lord also. So the guy's not at ease. He's not at ease. But he's gonna work very hard and produce good results. Frank Sinatra. We've got Sun Mercury square Jupiter Chiron. And Jupiter is in domicile, and it's in domicile in Sagittarius as well. So it's dignifying the Sun and Mercury, which is excellent. The Sun, so Jupiter is ruling the second cusp, a voice, right? And so it's a very strong Jupiter. It's also got Moon and Chiron to back it up. Very creative, strong Jupiter, very strong Sun because the Sun and Mercury are dignifying it in the second house. So, right, so very strong second house, very strong second lord. So that's the voice, Frank's voice, the voice of Frank Sinatra. And the square, the square is not so bad in this case because of the dignities. Because Jupiter in Pisces, square Sun and Mercury in Sag. Now Mercury in Sag is not so good. It's opposite domicile, so it's in detriment, and it's combust here. But Jupiter definitely helps it out a lot by being the nature of Jupiter, also by being in domicile. But this square definitely creates a lot of, like, it's going to create somebody who's working hard, in relation to the second house mostly, because Jupiter rules the second house, and these planets are in the second house. So second house focus, but it's also going to bring in the MC because the Sun's ruling the MC. Eighth house cusp, and 11th house. So interesting. Um, eighth house would definitely bring in a certain element of um, it does tend to bring in that underworldly quality, that criminal element, right? And Frank Sinatra definitely treaded that water with that underworldly element. All right. Sarah Silverman, she's a comedian, kind of offensive to a lot of people. Um, you know, I don't really like her very much, but I don't only just talk about people I like. She got a moon in Capricorn. Moon in Capricorn is like, you know, not very expressive. So I mean, she's very cold. I think that's why she's so offensive because her expression is not coming from her heart. Have to understand, Moon and Capricorn, they're not expressing their heart. If they're expressing anything, it's not their heart. I mean, obviously, she's got Neptune, in Sag, conjunct the ascendant, Sun and Mercury in the first house, right? So first house planets are extremely expressive. So this is her expression. And here's her creativity, Venus and Jupiter and Scorpio in the 12th, right? Um, not some a lot of planets not in good dignity, right? I mean, moon, debilitated moon, detriment Mercury, um, Jupiter is okay, Venus, also detriment, Mars, detriment. Yeah. And people with the funny thing is when you have comedians who have a lot of planets in detriment, they tend to be very dirty, right? And gross. And she is. Her humor is very dirty and gross. And it's consistent. Music, like comedians, artists, whenever the planets are not in good dignity, they do not behave well. They tell very dirty, bad jokes. Not bad, but like bad, naughty. They're very naughty, right? Artists, comedians, anyone who has poor dignity planets tend to be very, very naughty. So Moon in Capricorn square Uranus and Libra. So there's a tendency to be cold and shocking with her. And she, it's like really she's really pushing that envelope. Because Moon in Capricorn really can be cold and heartless. Not really, but their expression is that way. Like they have a very hard time being expressing their heart. And with Uranus is not a personal planet. Uranus square Moon in Capricorn. I mean, she just loves to be mean, mean spirited. Um, she can get a laugh from it. So that's why a lot of people don't like her. Um, Pluto square Mercury. I mean, good thing is that Mercury rules Virgo, so this Pluto's, you know, um, that's probably why she has a career because Mercury is dignifying this Pluto. Mercury is her MC lord. It's in the first house. That's partially why Mercury does well in the first house in general, right? But uh, yeah, um, that's Mercury square Pluto. That's definitely going to be some aggressive, strong talk. You know, um, Pluto doesn't pull any punches, right? Pluto's hard hitting, and Pluto's powerful. Pluto does not hold back. Pluto's the heavyweight mastermind, not the physicality, but the mastermind, the strategy. So intellectually, there's some, you know, deep thinking going on here, um, but potentially quite aggressive with that square. Anyway, um, where else shall skip that? Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen. He has. He's got his sun square the nose. I know it doesn't look like it, but that's the sun right here. That's interesting. The sun in Virgo, square the nose. He's got a sun conjunct Uranus and Pluto. Talk about shocking and destructive. You know, he's got sun conjunct Uranus, and so he's extremely independent, but also very, very destructive potentially. And he's got his moon in Sag. Moon and Sag are wild, can be very wild. And Jupiter and Gemini, definitely not religious or spiritual. Um, North node in Gemini, square the sun. So the sun square the node shows attention, attention, a certain kind of attention to that planet, but also like a destiny, because these are the nodes of destiny. Our past karma, our future karma. And then in between is something that is predestined or that we need to somehow develop in this life. And this is sun. So sun often relates to fame. So this guy's famous, obviously, actor. So that's interesting. If the sun is touching the south node, forget it. You're gonna live a bohemian lifestyle. You're just gonna walk off the beaten path into the woods, doing weird shit that nobody has ever done before, on your own or with some hippie commune or something like that. If it's conjunct the north node, it's going to be the opposite. You're going to walk straight into the world, becoming like the most worldly, maybe even famous. If it's square the nodes, it's just going to be weird. It's going to be worldly. It's going to be non-worldly. It's going to be intense. It's going to be very Charlie Sheen like. It's going to be all over the place. I'm just picking people at random. Shakira. I always want to start singing that song when I think about Shakira. Her hips don't lie. She's pretty good. She's a pretty good singer. I mean, and she's hot. She's definitely powerful. She got Jupiter and Taurus in the second house. Forget it. Forget it. Forget about it. It's done. It's over. It's Jupiter and Taurus in the second house. And moon's in Cancer. The moon is square the nodes here. So moon square the nodes. It's not tightly square, but it's still square. And moon square the nodes is definitely not going to be easy, but it is moon Cancer. But it's going to create a lot of tension. Moon is ruling the fourth cusp. So something about her childhood that was like very destined. It's like something predestined about her childhood or her upbringing or her home or her homeland, real estate, and her happiness at home. And she's also got some other squares. It's a Saturn, Sun, Saturn, and Uranus. So that's interesting. Uranus is a little wild. This is more of an opposition, but Uranus square the sun. That would just create a lot of shocking friction, accidents, trauma. So Uranus and Scorpio in the eighth house, square Saturn and the sun. That's going to be difficult. Definitely going to be difficult. Some sort of shocking death situation potentially happening there. Not sure what that might mean. Oh, look at this. Mars is also square. Mars is the ascendant lord. Mars is exalted in the 10th house. So very powerful career, very powerful ascendant lord, very powerful body, physicality. Right? Even though Mars and Venus are not connected, Venus is in the sign of Mars, and Mars is super strong, right? And then Mars opposite Moon, which is an interesting, definitely gives her some dynamic qualities there. The square to the nodes. So all of that, there's definitely some major karma and destiny going on there. And then Saturn, this is really interesting too. Sun, Saturn, mutual reception right there. Boom. That's crazy. So good. There's All right, let me pull up. We're gonna pull up Charles Manson because I know he's got like nothing but squares and hardship and difficulty. And Charles Manson basically spent his whole life in jail. Um, and this is what I was talking about. He had an extremely difficult upbringing. Father left when young. Mother was a criminal, alcoholic, and he basically learned how to be a criminal from young age. And look at this chart, right? All squares. Um, I knew another person who had a very, very strong T square, not T square, Grand Cross, like Charles Manson, in their chart. And this person was a huge alcoholic. Their mother died of alcoholism. Mother drank themselves to death, and they were going down the same path, same exact path. Uh, they pulled. So last I heard, they quit drinking, pulled themselves out of it. But it shows this whole thing that squares represent difficulty, and initially it's projected outward. But when we can embrace that hardship that life is handing to us, because this is our karma, when we can embrace it, that's when the external hardship subsides because we've embodied that. We've taken that lesson in. And these are all lessons, right? The lessons start externally. Once we embrace them and internalize them, they become part of us. They become part of who we are. And then we don't need them to keep going on the outside. That's the lesson that astrology has for us. So Charles Manson had a very, very difficult lesson in this life. He had to learn how to work hard, how to be, a self-disciplined person rather than being a criminal manipulator, right? Look at all these Scorpio seventh house planets. He was a huge manipulator. He got people to do things for him, including murder, right? He ran his own cult. He was a cult leader, right? That's Scorpio in the seventh house. With a lot of planets. It's not the only way. There's different ways it can manifest. I don't want to, scare you. You have Scorpio in the seventh house and some planets there. So it can mean many different things, right? But he also had Jupiter conjunct Mercury, which Jupiter conjunct Mercury. And if you listen to him speak, it's so obvious. He just waxes philosophical, and he's so manipulative and so charming when he wants to be. But he can just go on and on and on and on and on and on. And I have Jupiter and Mercury in the seventh house, but mine are in Taurus, right? And they're a little farther apart. But still, regardless, I mean, I still have that verbosity. I am a Gemini, of course, but the Jupiter to Mercury really expands mercurial things. Mercury really likes to be concentrated, so it's not very detailed. You're not going to get somebody like Charles Manson doing like scientific math equations. No, he's going to convince you that the government is doing all this stuff, which it is, and you got to kill somebody because they deserve to die, right? And he'll manipulate you. Think he's the leader, which he was clearly, but anyway. Very manipulative, but all these squares, really, really intense. Projected outward, it shows that he spent his life in prison, right? Because that's square. That's square. It's just like, rock on rock, rock in a hard place. And what else? Yeah, it shows a lot of hard work. Okay, I remember what the other great. It's not even on here. I have to pull it up here. By the way, if you're ever thinking to yourself that like I'm kind of hard to understand or I slur my words, because I'm Neptune and Sag in the second house, and it makes me sound like a drunk. I just thought I'd throw that out there because I've had people comment saying that they can't understand me very easily, or that I slur my words. It's not because I'm drinking, it's because I have Neptune in the second house in Sag, and I'm always like this. I sound like I'm drunk. Also not very good for money. Money and resources. We're gonna pull up Bruce Lee because he's got a great square. Okay, Bruce Lee. Boom, fantastic. Mars, square, Pluto. Mars and Scorpio. So domicile Mars, square, co-ruler of Scorpio, Pluto and Leo. Super, super intense square. And this is the thing that drove him to be Bruce Lee, be a master, right? So squares, we could see two examples here just in the last two. Charles Manson, who spent his life in jail, basically, externalized squares, internalized square, Bruce Lee, somebody who worked extremely hard to achieve, this tremendous status. And then Chiron, Venus, right? Chiron, Venus square shows that he can play like roles, right? Creative roles. He was the Green Hornet, I guess you could say. I guess it was. Funny thing about Bruce Lee in the movies is like, I think it was like with the Green Hornet, the cameras weren't very good, and he moved so fast that you really couldn't see him doing his kung fu. So he had to slow it down for the cameras, believe it or not. He had to slow it down just so they'd be able to pick up his movements. Otherwise, they couldn't see it. Okay, so that's the sextiles and the squares. I think I've given enough examples, but I'm actually going to do one more just for fun. Oh, darn. Let's pull it up again. We're going to look at a Clinton. Your favorite non-president? Hillary Clinton. Okay. Look at the square. We're just looking at Bruce Lee, right? Now think about Bruce Lee. Now think about Hillary Clinton. Now remember that they're both actors, but she's not supposed to be an actor. She's supposed to be a politician. Okay? But Mars conjunct Pluto here in Leo with Saturn, and Saturn does not do well in Leo. A tremendous ego. I have Mars and Saturn in Leo, but not Pluto. Yeah, so ego, for certain, it's also ascendant Lord Mars, but it's conjunct Pluto, exact, right? So super intense. And then we got it square Venus, Chiron, and then widely the whole thing, her sun and ascendant included, south node, right? But so mainly Venus. In Scorpio. And so Mars and Pluto are dignifying this whole front house, but there's still this tremendous tension there that is either going to be projected outwards or embodied inwards, which shows that all this nice bullshit is exactly that. It's just her acting. The Clinton body count, that's real. That's a real thing. Like, she really is a criminal. And it's obvious and then so Saturn and Leo square the nose. Okay, that's another one. Right. And then Moon square Uranus. I mean, come on, guys. This lady is not she's not a nice person, first of all. She's not clean, and she's not. Scorpio is the sign of being above the law. Not every Scorpio acts that way, but like definitely with this ego, this super entitled ego, square all these planets in Scorpio, you better believe that the law means nothing to her and that people's lives mean nothing to her. It's really, she's a criminal. She's a criminal. I could pull up some other people's criminals charts and then you'll see it's not that much different. Other criminals. She's a criminal. So that's the square, makes somebody super intense and strong and, fighting hard, strong-willed, difficult circumstances, but watch out for these people because You know, they've learned through the school of hard knocks how to fight and how to struggle, how to work hard. Right? These are not lightweights. Strong squares make heavyweights. Squares make heavyweights. Put that in the bank. All right. So that's sextiles and squares. I think we looked at enough examples. I'm gonna stop sharing. That's basically it. We could go a lot deeper. I don't want to oversimplify it and make it seem like that was it. There's nothing else to say. We could look at, some people talk about whether it's, an opening square or closing square based on the fastest moving planet, starting from there. But that's complicating things unnecessarily. And it's enough to know that squares create a lot of tension between those two planets, and they make work hard. They can have a suppressing effect on a weaker planet. Let's say it's the moon or Mars. If there's a square, it may suppress that energy, that planet, and so that would have to be outsourced and projected into the world in that case, and then you have hardship, right? But if you can embrace it, if you can embody it, then that's best. So, in any case, guys, yeah, that's the sextile and square, and soon I will do the trine and the opposition. All right, that's it for now.